them to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on the court from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on the rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through what? In a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jade on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Key, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that make cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Real Talk with ZSJ. Drinking some tea. My throat has been a little bit, seems like I'm trying to come under the weather a little bit. But anyway, tonight I am excited to welcome a very special guest. Sister Jade Arrindell is my guest tonight. I also wanted to read, I guess YouTube, you have to read this copyright disclaimer when you share different things and play different articles. But before I do that, I want to tell everyone to like the video, share it. You can invite others to come on in to the space. Should be a good conversation with the sister tonight. And she, let me see here, read this copyright disclaimer. All right, so this copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright of 1976. Allowance is made for, quote, fair use for the purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. So we got that out the way. I don't want to get a flag from YouTube. Shout out to Sister Jade who told me yeah, you got to start playing that. They'll give you a flag. So I'm new to this, y'all. Y'all know this channel is new. So I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out all the tech and all of that good stuff. But welcome, Sister Jade. Introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are, sis.
Thanks for having me, Sister Zakia. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Jade Arrindell. I do a lot of work. I'm an educator. I do some national work organizing. I'm the national vice chair of the National Black United Front. I'm a contributor on Fly Nubian Queen Network and the founder and CEO of Victory of the People Movement, LLC. So I do solutions to undoing anti-Black racism, which is very, very specific. I'm not talking about people of color. I'm not talking about minorities. I don't even know what that is. I'm talking about Black folks. Anti-Black racism. So we work on solutions in doing that in the areas of education, policy, and media. So thanks for having
me. Yeah, girl, you being humble. You know, you be all over the place. I don't know. I can hardly ever really keep up to you. And then you like in between two cities. So you be in New York holding it down. Then you be down here in DC holding it down. Just so much respect for you. And I'm like, like I said, you being real humble in that introduction. But I know you do amazing work out there on the front lines a lot of times, particularly, you know, when some of the protests and things like that happen in DC. Of course, your stuff and interviews that you've done on Fly Nubian Queen, you know, all have been just amazing, you know, and certainly you've done a lot to help our community and help the culture. I wanted to see if you could share a little bit more about your organization that you co-founded. I know that it's around education equity and doing education work in New York City.
Well, yeah. So my consultancy company is what, you know, I work on. I've created that. I'm the founder and CEO. It's an LLC. It's not a nonprofit. So I do a lot of consulting and coaching. I have some clients. I've gone to social services programs and different sorts of institutions to do workshops and facilitate anti-Black racism or undoing anti-Black racism. But I also do anti-racism work in a different capacity for another organization that I've been a consultant with for several years. So that work is really exciting. A lot of clients from around the country in different school districts. So that looks like doing like professional development on getting children and adults to talk about race and racism in general.
Right. No, that's good work, especially getting young people activated and talking about, I mean, like they see it clearly. They living in the same country and communities we're living in, so they know that it's there, but giving them the tools and I think strategies to be able to navigate that is amazing. Well, I didn't hold it up, you know, we're supposed to be talking about current events and all this stuff that's been happening lately. Let's see, where do we start? So for the folks who are watching, you know, please like the video, you know, share it, invite folks, you know, into this conversation. I'm sure it's going to be very good and entertaining for folks who are watching. So a lot has been happening. One of the things that I have been pretty intrigued about, I mean, you know, my politics, you know, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. You and I have talked about it on your show, Fly Nubian Queen. And I have been critical of like the whole strategy around getting out the vote, right? And I talked about like how lots of folks in our community came for Ice Cube and others for simply saying we need to have an agenda, right, that people are signing on to that is very specific to the needs of Black people before we just be like, okay, we're just gonna run out and get on this train and just vote. And I'm saying all that to say, because recently, you know, we've been seeing some of these leaked kind of, you know, audio, and today we'll talk about that. But then also like, you know, the civil rights leaders, what I call big box civil rights organizations, have been critical of Joe Biden, saying like it's been a month and you ain't called us, right? We had a meeting with you. And I'm just like, well, what did you expect? I mean, like, if you literally just line up your people and tell them to vote and you don't have an agenda, like you don't talk about specifics, what call are you waiting for? What are you expecting to talk about? I just want to get your reflections on that.
Yeah. So listen, I actually started chuckling because every time these stories come out where there's Black folk who were hell-bent on dragging, right? And I hate that. That's exactly what they do. They drag people like you. They drag people like me, any independent free thinker. They would drag our brother Ice Cube, right? Anyone who demanded anything in exchange for a Black vote, during election season and leading up to election season were pretty much shunned. And these are the same people who are using their platforms to disparage other Black folks who are, adamantly saying like, listen, our votes are for sale and we're going to sell it to the highest bidder in exchange for some tangible resources, protections, and policies that are going to empower Black folk. And now you have those same organizations and folks who are literally begging Massa for just time on his calendar, for acknowledgement, for some sort of like meritorious manumission. Hey, I helped you deliver the Black vote, so look at me now. You hurt my feelings. You're not paying attention to me. Well, we tried to tell you that, the Democratic Party basically played the role. It was like a game of pimps and hoes. I mean, I'm sorry to say it that way.
Come on.
It was like pimping out the Black vote. Like, okay, you are going to get out there and work, use your platforms, use your influence to tell Black people to vote Democrat down ballot, right, in exchange for nothing. We will continue to practice benign neglect, and how you better not ask me for nothing. You better not talk back. And so this is what we're getting. So on one hand, I do chuckle at it, but on the other hand, it's just really, really sad and pathetic because we have like these historic Black organizations. And when I say historic, have a track record of having played integral roles within the civil rights movement in particular. Right now, I'm not talking about the Black liberation movement. We're very, very, independent and, do practice self-determination. But a lot of these historically Black organizations have been the foundation of progress for the past 100 years or so or more in our community. And so now it's really sad to see that a lot of these organizations and some of these leaders have kind of sold us out in exchange for nothing. So I'm not surprised that the Biden-Harris campaign have that particular approach toward the Black community at this point.
Yeah, I feel like, with some of those big box civil rights organizations, it can be argued that they, have actually sold out the community many years ago. As you know, some people point out the fact that the NAACP was mainly founded by white people with a few Black people like W.E.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells. And so like the funding and all of that has always, I believe in some respects, kind of compromised them in some ways to get them to focus on other things. And that's been historically, documented. And as you know, I work in the education justice, field. And one of the things that I learned through just happenstance, like really just reading through some materials that I had through some research, and found out that initially the NAACP actually wanted to, when it was founded, wanted to work on anti-lynching legislation because that was the issue kept happening to us, right? But it was some funders that came along and was like, yeah, but we really want you all to focus on education. This is what's important and all of this. And so they started to get funding to do education work and neglected to continue the work on anti-lynching legislation, right? So as you know, we never got a bill signed into law anti-lynching, during that time. But that work actually led up to Brown versus Board of Education. Many people don't necessarily make those connections, but I have started to make those connections because I'm like well, when did the NAACP change? We get this narrative, this popular narrative that, they have always, worked and listened to the community. Well, in the beginning, yes, to some respects. And I feel like that, is a lot like what we're seeing now with the BLM movement or whatever, with, some of the chapters and stuff, writing a letter asking for accountability. It seems like how do I say this? It seems like, the thing is the fact that we literally don't have an economic base. And so it's easy for people who look like us to end up capitulating because of funding. And you see that kind of like over and over again. But I wanted to share this article to your point, because there was some leaked information from Biden's campaign. And it said here, that Biden told civil rights leaders privately that he doesn't want progressives to get their hopes up around executive actions that he should take. So my whole thing is like, so you already getting in office telling us, like y'all told us to vote, right? You made it all about Trump. And then now y'all get in there and y'all want to tell us, now hold on now, we ain't gonna be able to do all this here stuff that y'all want to do. Like basically, and not deliver on the people who voted for him. And so I guess my question is, because I'm about there, is what's the efficacy of voting in a national election? Not talking about locally, but in a national presidential election for Black people at this point with these two political parties?
Yeah, I don't see Black folks having a future in either of those political parties, particularly the Democratic Party. I mean, especially the Republican Party, but I'm talking about particularly the Democrat Party, because most Black folks have been trained to vote Democrat down ballot no matter what, as if it's like a holy ritual or, taking Holy Communion every 4 years. We don't have a future within this two-party system. What we have to do is organize and form an independent political party. And I know you and I talked about that extensively. I think the first time you came on to Fly Nubian Queen into my program. However, listen, Biden and Kamala Harris are doing the same thing that they were doing, where they were campaigning and pandering to the Black vote. Now, Biden went onto the Breakfast Club and told this Black man named Charlemagne the God, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. That's been the attitude. And now that they have gotten into the White House, it's kind of like, well, in the first 100 days, what I plan to do as president is vaccinate 100 million people, give all sorts of rights and protections to the LGBTQIA plus community, and do any and everything I can for undocumented immigrants. Forget y'all Black
Nothing
folks.
about Black people.
Nothing about us at all. And so it's kind of like, them telling us, okay, wait your turn. Well, hold up, wait, my ancestors, we built this country, right? We're still here and we're fighting against this beast. And I know for a fact that if we plan on surviving, then we have to practice Powernomics, and we have to create a strong, independent economic base and a political base. Aside from these two parties, we create our own agenda, and then, we run our own candidates, and we lobby, and we get things done that way. Every other racial group and demographic within this country does that, and they're treated like full human beings. However, you have Black folk, who have been manipulated to give their votes in exchange for nothing. And then you have other groups coming behind us now after the Black community definitely saved the Democratic Party in this presidential election, but you got white men trying to take credit for getting Biden elected. You got, what's that Latina chick who went on, she used her platform.
Eva Longoria.
Yeah, Eva Longoria talking about it was Latinos who saved this election. And so just completely trying to erase us. We cannot allow these folks to,
but can we interrogate that language a little bit? Because I'm so glad you brought that up. So a couple things I want us to go deeper on. So one is the Powernomics, but that's second. And then two, which I want us to talk about first, is this idea of saving. And I don't know if you've been seeing my posts, but I shared this 3-minute clip from Malcolm X from 60 years ago now. And, he was talking about even back then how Black people voted in the block for the Democrats and got Kennedy elected. And that Democrats back then, I believe the year may have been like 62 or 61. I forget the year. I think it had to be 61. But hell, that's 50 years. Yeah, 50, 60 years ago. But anyway, he was like, now, so we talking about the same thing. This is what got me. He was like, they got the Senate, they got the House, and they got the presidency, and they still ain't talking about the issues that we care about. They're still not talking about what's important to Black people. And I was shocked because at the end of that clip, he said, he called us political chumps, but he also said you're a traitor to your race. Keep voting for Democrats. And I was like, I have never heard people quote Malcolm when he says that. And I was like, so that was the clip that I had on my show the other day, because I was like, because I do these little impromptus by myself, like lives like you do on Facebook. I was like, oh, I gotta go live real quick. I was like, because I want people to hear this and put this in context. But I say all that to say, what did we save? If we're not saving ourselves, if Black people showed up in numbers continuously in a block and we voted for Democrats, and we look at the first 100-day agenda of this man's agenda and we ain't nowhere on there.
Mm-hmm.
So what did we save? I mean, whose language is that? Because I don't think that narrative came from the community. That's a narrative that came from the bourgeois media and people who are standing to get some crumbs, if you will, because that's how, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's what I felt like the so-called civil rights leaders who were complaining, well, wait a minute, this ain't the arrangement that we got. You ain't called us. We done lined our people up and you ain't called us. Where's our crumbs and stuff?
Listen, that language did come from Massa and them, from the dominant society, and what we saved and what Black folks have, politically, what we have been saving with our votes is the system of white supremacy. We saved the country, and we saved the status quo of the country, which is benign neglect, go along to get along, possibly trying to sell the idea of a post-racial society with the first allegedly Black woman vice president, and all of that stuff.
Right? I heard you. Allegedly.
Allegedly Black woman. I mean, a lot of people will disagree and say she's not Black or that she is.
The comments now with that one.
But basically, especially we're still in this pandemic, going through this pandemic, and then with this racialized war and these ritualistic killings by these race soldiers, America was literally up in flames this year. And so basically what the Black vote did was kind of save the status quo to kind of rock folks back to sleep, to give them the illusion of some sort of normalcy, which was equally as dysfunctional as what we experienced under the Donald Trump administration. It was just more insidious. And so that seems to be where we're going right now. My main concern, and to bring it back to like me to, think about the words of our ancestor Malcolm X, right now, it's like we are in a civil war within society, right? Those who of privilege and power, those who are caping for the dominant society, and those of us who want to deviate from it and to create a new system and to practice self-determination and self-efficacy, and to rebuild something on our own, independent of white folk, independent of brown folk and red folk and every other type of group. So I think that I can't say what our ancestor Malcolm X would say about today, but I suspect that his word definitely rings true, and now it's even more sophisticated. Like the mind control, the Stockholm syndrome is even more sophisticated. And the final point I'll make before I know you want to ask the next question is for me to clarify the pimp hoe relationship situation that we're in politically in this country, especially with the Democrat Party. Let's just be clear that is an abusive relationship.
It is. So Black women can save us with the Democratic Party, but Black men are the enemy. Have you noticed that play?
Absolutely. Constantly putting that narrative that Black men are the enemy, constantly trying to pit us against Black men, constantly trying to normalize the absence of Black men in political spaces and economic spaces and places of power and privilege, and to completely erase them. And we can't have that. I think that what a lot of folks in our community, the bourgeois class, they mistake progress for what is actually abuse, subjugation, dominance. And it's really, really sad. So we're going to be fighting an uphill battle with, if the Antichrist 45 is leaving the White House, we have Lucifer entering the White House. And it's not improving our condition one bit.
It's not. And I just wanted to share really quickly, because I know people hear like this definition, or hear this word benign neglect a lot. And I wanted to share, I'm going to share my screen here to just give people a complete or fuller understanding of what that actually is. So just give me a second to just go ahead and share and pull that up. Let me know if you all are able to see that. Are you able to see it, Jade?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is a website that I found that kind of gives you a brief history of the benign neglect policy in both the United States and British history. And so it says the policy of benign neglect blames the victims themselves for racial tensions. This website, Historyplex, explains the meaning of this because it's an actual policy. That's what people need to understand. And it's still right in effect in 2020. And I'm frustrated. I get so frustrated at the fact that we don't talk about that when people want to drag us out the vote, or when people want to browbeat our community, when the community is responding to this. Like, okay, well, I voted the last 4 years and okay, I voted 8 years ago too. I voted this and I voted that. I have voted in every single election since I've been able to vote. And I can tell you that the conditions of my community have continued to deteriorate every single election that I vote. So don't tell me, right, that I'm crazy for saying that, okay, this is not working. Because, right, this policy, it actually came from Daniel Patrick Moynihan. So people are probably familiar with him, the man behind the benign neglect policy. And he served under 4 successive U.S. presidencies. So in the 1960s, of course, that marked an eventful period, civil rights movement, all of that. Richard Nixon came to power in 1969. And during his presidency, some of the most prominent measures to end racial segregation were passed. Also, I'll add an addendum that affirmative action actually was instituted under Richard Nixon. A lot of people don't know that, but you can do your own research. That is the truth. And so at the time, more than half of the African-American community lived in the Southern United States. And so, people can go to this website, you can also do some more research on this, but this has been a long-standing policy for many years. They use it in Great Britain, and it was really brought to prominence, if you will, under the Nixon administration. Right. So this is something that I just want people to know, like, we're not just talking about things that we don't know, right? They're like what we're talking about. This is real. And this is why there's so many people in our community who take a position and decide, I'm not voting, or I am voting for a third party, right? Because how many times do people get beat over the head for saying, oh, okay, I'm gonna vote, but I'm voting for who I want to vote for. It's all about like keeping us in the Democratic Party. And then the other thing I will say, and people need to understand this, there are people who look like us that get paid 6 figures, high 6 figures too, honey, to tell us to vote and to vote for Democrats. Meanwhile, we actually get nothing for our own material conditions as an entire community. So I just wanted to bring our sister Jade back in because you also mentioned powernomics. I wanted you to have an opportunity to really go in a little bit deeper on why that's important in the context of this conversation.
Absolutely. So Dr. Claude Anderson talks about and has been calling out benign neglect politically that we have been experiencing in this country from, a historical standpoint, but definitely when it comes on to economics. And listen, I'm in the Powernomics masterclass right now. It's through the Black Business School. Yeah, it's through the Black Business School. Dr. Anderson comes on. We have office hours and all that good stuff. And he gives a lecture and we go through, where's my book? Right here. We've just been going through like the different keys to empowerment. I highly recommend this book. It's called Powernomics for anyone who's listening, and I'm sure Sisters IKEA, you might want to like put that out. But he talks about things like, the different elements of a functional community, and without an economic base, we're unable to control the politics, and the cultures the commerce and everything within our communities, we become dependent on the dominant society and other groups. And one of the things that we need to really start practicing is really getting involved again in industry and infrastructure. Fishing, mining, farming, being able to, we should have Black businesses across the board in industries where we own the products, we own the distribution of those products, the manufacturing of those products, and the selling, et cetera, of those products to build a strong economic base. And so, unfortunately, we do have Black businesses. So I don't want to put this idea out that we don't have Black businesses, that Black folks aren't practicing self-determination, that we don't have our own schools, etc. And we're really being spread out. We don't really have Black communities anymore, right? Like a lot of us have, our grandmother lives in one state or one city, and relatives and stuff are pretty much spread out. And we're pretty much living in integrated societies, even within inner cities. And so community building and nation building is also essential to that. Now, when we start talking about powernomics or calling out the benign neglect that we're experiencing politically as Black folk, we have the elites amongst us who are kind of like, shh, stop making trouble, or be grateful for these little crumbs that you're getting off a master's table. It's like, actually, nah, I don't want to be at this table. We want to build our own table. And so that's just a general understanding of that. Yeah, and I see a comment that it says, I think BJP Graham says, Dr. Anderson is pioneering thought leader on Black economic development. Absolutely.
Yes, he is. And to your point in terms of like creating these businesses and getting back into, controlling the distribution and all of that, we're increasingly in a technocratic society, right? Like it's becoming more and more technocratic. And that's something I would love to hear Dr. Anderson and other economists really take into consideration in terms of where do we go from here as a community. Because one of the things that I will tell you that I am extremely concerned about, and I've been studying the financial markets very seriously starting just this year. So I am by no means an expert. I'm certainly not an economist, but I can read and infer and understand information and comprehend, right? And one of the things that I have noticed is that increasingly we have multi-billion-dollar companies who literally own no real estate, right? They don't have employees, they have contractors, right? And I say that because Uber, Lyft, Facebook, right? Twitter, all of these online tech companies, Uber and Lyft, obviously not a tech company, but we also have Airbnb IPO today. So for people who don't understand what IPO is, that's when a company goes public. Do you realize they came on the market, came on the scene with a multi-billion-dollar valuation or worth? They don't own it. They don't own any properties. Hotels own properties. Hotels have employees. Airbnb. So and Amazon, they're the hugest. Amazon is on track, and the Jeff Bezos is on track to be the world's first trillionaire. So we really got to rethink this idea of economics. And I think it's really, honestly, at this point, it's such a moving train because of blockchain technology. In fact, I'm going to have a sister on who is actually I believe she is a cybersecurity analyst. She lives down in North Carolina, and she is coming in to tell us about what's coming, what she sees in the industry. And we have got to be ready. I think that, short of a revolution, I don't know what's going to slow this thing down. And I'll mention again, there's 250 million people still in India who are striking because this is a global phenomenon. It's just not the United States. Keep in mind, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, all of them, Amazon, these are global companies. They might be founded in America, but they're global companies. So I'm so glad you brought that up because, everything is shifting. People are calling this the fourth industrial revolution. People are calling this the new roaring 20s. And I just don't know that it's going to be good for the vast majority of us the way that things are looking now. Our government is not keeping up with the pace of this so-called innovation. They're not regulating. Thank God I just saw that the government sued Facebook yesterday. If you didn't see that, they sued
I did
Facebook.
see that. Yeah, that's kind of groundbreaking. That's actually really good because just like they tried to bust up Rockefeller's companies and monopolies, within industries. I mean, I want to see what's going to come of that. I mean, Facebook is a beast in of itself, and I think you're definitely right. There aren't enough of us in Silicon Valley. Enough of us are not in the forefront of this technological revolution. And what we are really, really, really lacking in, this is something I want to talk about. We can talk about this later with our young people, is this whole conversation around the environment and environmentalism and technology and this technological revolution and the environmental climate change movement are going to overlap, and they're overlapping in a way that is happening very, very rapidly because, innovation and technology is about energy preservation and consumption and all of those different things. But we have a lot of white children and young people who are, really, really invested in these coding type programs.
Mm-hmm.
They're becoming young economists. They're little techies. They're getting these internships and stuff in Silicon Valley. Our kids are not being prepared or getting their foot in the door for those same internships and opportunities, etc. And they're definitely not as active or present.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
and pointed out is what I'm concerned about. Our children, when you look at the schools, they're not preparing these kids for what they've been creating for the last, I don't know how many decades, but our kids are certainly not being prepared. The sister I'm bringing on, that's her whole passion. Is like, she, from her perspective, as a technologist, she's one of the few Black people who works in her company, and most of the other employees are white or Asian or South Asian or from India. Like she's literally one of the few Black people, and she was just saying how much those jobs pay. You don't need a college degree. She was talking about all you have to do is get a 6 to 8 week certification, and she's just like, I just want to get this information out. We got to stop. Our communities are not being prepared for what's coming. She's been talking about blockchain technology, which that's huge. I mean, I feel like, we're not talking about it in a way to at least warn our people of what's coming. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm sure people see it. Like, you walk into a store now and they'll tell you, we don't have no change. You need to use your credit card. I was shocked when that happened to me the first time. Has it happened to you yet?
Yeah, they did it a lot in DC and Northwest and in different stores. Like there was literally like a month or maybe even longer where they're like, oh, no cash, plastic only. It's a shortage of change. It's not a shortage of change. What y'all doing, what y'all trying to force us to do, but it was really not a shortage of change.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that has happened to me before several times.
Yeah. So anyway, I just felt like when you brought up that, I was like, I know that book has been written a while ago. I don't know if he has some new ideas around this new economy, because the economy is in the middle of a reset. Clearly, that's the words that the people at the World Economic Forum, the people who control the wealth in the world, that's what they're calling it, right? It's a reset, and so it's happening. And I feel like we just need to be aware of it and try to prepare. I don't know, the best that we can with this moving train that's happening. But no, I wanted to read this quote to the point that we were making earlier. I posted this on my Facebook page last week or maybe earlier this week. There's a quote from Mama Frances Cress Welsing, and I feel like it succinctly describes what we see in terms of the Black woman saved America when it comes to voting. And we saved what? We talking about RIP Brother Casey, Columbus, Ohio, murdered this weekend by Franklin County Sheriff's Department, right? What did we save? Because I don't feel like I've saved anything. Number one, I didn't vote for Joe Biden. I'm glad I didn't, but what did we save? And I just want to read this quote to the audience real quick. And People might hit the dislike button after I read this, but that's all right. So Mama Frances Fresh Welsing said, critical in the history of white supremacy was the decision not to control Black and other women of color, but to control the men of color. Thousands upon thousands of Black men in the US were lynched and castrated to drive home the message that white men intended to control the balls in the world. Quote, both on and off the court, white males understood that they needed white women as well as Black women to help them achieve and maintain this power relationship. White women always have known that they stood to gain. Hence, people still talking about over 50% of white women voted for Trump. Okay, anyway, let me finish reading the quote. As their own survival as whites. Let me read that again. White women always have known what they stood to gain, their own survival as whites. Black women have been confused and less clear in fully understanding how they have been led to cooperate in this deadly power game of white supremacy. Further, Black women do not understand fully that they have nothing to gain and everything to lose if this deadly game continues. What's your reflections on that?
Yeah, so white women, they may have beef with white men because white men, they are the originators of patriarchy, right? And so white women have fallen under their thumb and they have a really dysfunctional relationship. And at the end of the day, a white woman knows that in America and in the world, within the world of white supremacy, she's still white and she may not like certain social ills, but when it gets down to it, she's going to make sure that she's going to vote and act within her own interests to ensure her survival and the survival of her children and the survival of the system of white supremacy. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing definitely called it. And unfortunately, too many of our sisters have gotten themselves caught up and confused and manipulated under the thumb of Becky. As I like to call it, with this whole feminism movement. And really,
I just want to let the audience know we keep it real on this show, y'all. This is real talk, uncensored.
Yes, this is our kids gonna keep it real, keep it all the way 1,000. But unfortunately, with sexual revolution stuff, the feminism movement, Black women were indoctrinated into these ideas that our gripes or the issues that we have within our community, especially when it comes on to Black men, are synonymous with the white female experience, and that there's a universal experience that all women share, which is completely not true. That has been manipulated and it beefed up a lot of Black women to make them feel macho and to feel like, they are the saviors of the world. They're the backbone of we are the backbone of the community. We're the backbone of the political base of the Democratic Party, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just manipulation and it's oppression, which is really insidious and unfortunate because most of these women don't even know that they're being played by these agendas.
That's it. And so, like, when I read that quote, like, I'm clear as well, like on the survival of us, right? Like trying to protect us and our family. And so, like, literally my family includes my Black husband. My family includes my Black son. My immediate family includes my Black daughter. So it's only natural, right, that we, protect our own. And I was really, I'm constantly bewildered. I have to use that word, bewildered by what I see on Twitter, what I see now on this new app called Clubhouse. Do you realize it's an entire group on Clubhouse that asked the question, are Black men the white people of Black people, a spin off of that very smart
the very smart, very dumb brothers created, what was that, like 3-4 years ago or however long ago? So there's a whole group, people are still perpetuating that narrative.
Yeah.
This is why I know you mentioned the brother Casey from Ohio who was killed by some race soldiers. There was another brother who was 22 years old who got killed last night in Texas. And Lamar,
I hadn't heard about that one yet. Wow.
that's this. Lamar police officer shot and killed a 22-year-old man who investigators say was a person of interest and possibly connected to recent shootings in town. I don't give a damn. But I say all of that to say, as long as we have, especially Black women, who are feeding into this narrative that there's something inherently wrong with Black men, that Black men are monsters, it definitely seeps into the subconscious of America, and it kind of gives folks the green light to mass slaughter our brothers and essentially, you know, put all of us at risk. So yeah.
And I've said that, and I've seen Black women who are mothers. They actually have sons. And I see them like share all these horrible narratives, and they describe Black men in animalistic terms, like they're animals. Like it's like literally playing off of the white supremacist tropes, you know, of days old. But one of the things that I would always comment and say, I was like, do you realize that narrative and how you are socializing people to think about Black men and boys actually is going to impact your son? You know, like, do you realize like the way that you talk, the narratives that you create, right? These tropes, like that literally is going to impact his well-being and his life, and whether somebody thinks he deserved to be murdered when he's, you know, murdered by a cop or something like that. And I was like, it seems like these very highly educated, many of them with PhDs, can't seem to make that simple connection. And I struggle with that. And I'm like, is the money that good? Because I'm like, I mean, most college professors I know claim they don't get paid that well. So I'm like, what is it?
Maybe they're in positions that they feel like they have to be constantly auditioning to, you know, placate these white narratives. One, that's a possibility. Another possibility is because maybe they have issues with Black men, fathers, you know, husbands or relatives or whatever. And then three, a lot of folks unfortunately don't know how much they have been indoctrinated into these anti-Black narratives through media in general, music, media, news, and all of that stuff. And so we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And then not only are a lot of these anti-Black male, Black women mothers, a lot of them are educators. A lot of them are social workers. Some of them are
doctors. Tell me about it. I know. I mean, I am shocked. And then they put it out publicly because they don't even fear reprisal. Don't even fear reprisal that they will lose their jobs. Mm-hmm. I don't know any other subgroup of student or subgroup of people in this country that you can literally rail against like that and not get some kind of reprisal. And I think that is sad because it's divide and conquer. The only way, like we just got done talking about all these billionaires and all these companies that's running the gamut on this technology. And we don't have outrage around that because we're too busy fighting each other. We're too busy creating, like, you know, to me, I feel like it's an evolution and a more sophisticated form of COINTELPRO, in my opinion.
It is. And it's highly effective. And guess what?
It's highly effective.
All of these things are interconnected. So now when you have Black leaders being upset or in their feelings that Joe Biden and them are like, Negro, wait your turn, or we ain't talking about defunding the police, or you going to ruin
let's talk about that.
The election coming up in Georgia, then like all of these things are connected because guess what? You're going to have, they know that they're going to have a loyal base of Black folk that come hell or high water are going to defend their interests. And when I say their interests, the interests of the dominant society. And in this case, many of these so-called progressive leaders in the Democratic Party.
Right. That's another thing, because you're right. Joe Biden did actually say in a leaked audio, The Intercept leaked it, that, you know, we got our butts kicked up and down the ballot all over the country because of defund the police. So I see this as a tactic. They don't believe that. They don't believe that. This is a tactic because he said, well, you know, y'all need to go back and tell your people. This is what he told the civil rights people. was 7 of them in there. Derek from the NAACP, and I don't know who the others are, but the representatives for all of us, 48 million Black people. And he said, well, y'all need to go back and let them know the pipe down on that. Now that's my word. I don't, he ain't really said it, but basically in so many words, y'all need to pipe down on that. We ain't defunding the police. We don't believe in that. So not only are they not going to deal with the police, right, in a way that would stop them from killing us, they don't even acknowledge the fact that the reason why the community started calling for defunding the police in the first place is because of the continued murdering and genocide in our cities. That's by people who are so-called supposed to protect and serve. Now those of us know better. The police have never protected and served Black people. But the fact is that they're basically telling us one of the most important issues to the Black community, we're not doing nothing with that. Even though they wouldn't be there, right? We saved the country, right? Who did we save the country for?
We saved it. I mean, they saved it for them. I didn't vote for none of them, but
I didn't either.
The thing is that like, oh man, I think I'm losing my thought. Listen,
it's okay.
A lot of the same people who were out there talking about abolish the police, defund the police, and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd showed up to these protests and said that they were part of some of these groups. These are the same people who voted for Biden and Kamala Harris too.
Same people. You voted for Biden. Now so basically you're gonna get the same thing from Biden on this issue that you would have got from Trump. Make it make sense. I just need somebody to make it make sense for me.
But guess what?
Who did we save the country for?
Right. Who did you save the country? They saved it for the status quo, the dominant society. But now, peep this. The fact that this Biden audio came out, people are in an uproar about this. Listen, Barack Obama has already been making statements as of late about defunding the police. Did you hear what he said? Was it last week or the week before? That it's, in so many words, he said it was kind of like too radical or it didn't make sense. And so he was already downing the whole defund the police movement and concept and what we're talking about, which is completely, they are in doing that, completely dismissing the fact that our lives, especially the lives of Black men and Black boys, are under constant threat of being killed by some suspected white supremacists and race soldiers within law enforcement, period. Completely overlooks the data and the statistics and these incidents happening to say, you Negroes better be quiet and stay in line. So if you have Obama, who is like saying that, who was like the savior to Black people, many people who hold his picture up next to Jesus. And then you have Biden that comes in and tells the NAACP members or other Black leaders something very, very similar, then it's just more of the same. It's just more of the same. But nobody wanted to check Obama on that. Nobody wants to check Obama on not aligning himself with or doing anything to deliver anything tangible for our own interests, to protect Black life. And now you have Biden doing the same thing. And you have Black folks who are just like, you know what? And this is the sad part, Sisters Ikea. They're like, you know what? I'll take a Biden racism any day over that racism that Trump gave us, which made me feel bad, which reminded me of Jim Crow, which hurt my feelings. Oh, I can't hear you. Are you muted?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Listen, man, like this is why, when do we get to the point that we vote in our own interest if we're going to participate in the process? Because what happens is that people who, because I look at, this is my second because I wasn't on Facebook in 2008 like that. This is my second presidential cycle, if you will, on social media, where I see people going hard because they've been programmed by the news and the Democrats and paid all these mercenaries in our community to come gather up the vote. Okay, y'all, come on now, it's time to vote. And then you don't see these, where they at? I'm serious. It's what's the date? December the 10th. Where they at? Ain't nobody calling him out for this? Ain't nobody. Hey, where's all the people that's telling us to vote for? Oh, they down in Georgia telling you to go and vote for the Democrats down in Georgia to do what? So if we get the 2 people in the Senate, what does that mean for Black people? I'm sorry. I'm going to always ask that question because I'm tired. Vote for what?
They're voting for trickle down economics because people believe in that, right? Other policies, lift all policies that are going to support everyone for housing, support everyone for student debt relief, support everyone for universal health care. That's good enough for some people, but it's not good enough for me. Not good enough for me.
It's not good enough. And I think, as we, wrap this up, sister, because this has been a powerful hour so far. I think, and I'm actually going to have Brother Omawale Africa. I know you're familiar with him and his work. He's done a documentary called Un-American Documentary. I encourage all the listeners to go on to, not Spotify. What's the other one? Vimeo. It's on Vimeo. Go on to Vimeo. Be sure to rent that. And it's an organizing tool because we cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That don't make no sense, family. We cannot continue to do that. Is an organizing tool. It is an organizing tool to help us before this next election to make a different decision, a decision that is going to impact our community in a way where we're not just being served up, as you put so brilliantly earlier, as this pimp and hoe relationship, because it's a very abusive relationship with the Democratic Party, right? So, sister, please give us your final thoughts as we wrap up this conversation. I definitely got to have you back, but this has been great. I'm glad that you've been here to help with this conversation, offer your analysis. Give us some of your final thoughts.
Yes, Sister Zakia, thank you for having me on. I do look forward to coming back. I look forward to bringing you back into my podcast as well on Fly New Beat Clean Network called The Lioness Den. So listen, I would like for us to get to a point where any Black organization, historic Black organizations like the Urban League or NAACP chapters, etc. There's Black Lives Matter folk and all of these different organizations kind of do more work with boots on the ground and kind of taking an inventory with the community members, right? Folks that they serve to see exactly what the needs are and what is wanted and needed, what folks are advocating for themselves, and then try to help bring those resources in and do it from a more grassroots level as opposed to just going straight to the top and going to the dominant society to try to appeal to them for resources, access, et cetera, because what I think the issue is that like and it's not just about the organizations in particular, but some people within our community are more so aligned with the interests of the dominant society, and they have no idea of what's wanted and needed or what's happening on the ground. And so we need that kind of cross-pollination in order for us to support each other, unify, get some things done. Next thing is we have to create a strong Black independent economic base, and we have to form our own independent party. I think that we need a mass exodus out of the Republican Party as Black folk, and we need a mass exodus out of the Democrat Party as Black folk, and we have to find some common ground and advocate for unapologetic and consistent Black agenda that puts our issues first, and there are standalone issues for Black folk. I would love to see that happen. I would love to, we have to have a cultural shift. Right. And we have to become more fluent in terms of recognizing, defining, and being able to analyze white supremacy and how it shows up in our community, in our family structures and institutions, but also personally. And this will be an invitation for many of the Black feminists to really, really sit and think about how they have been indoctrinated into so much anti-Black male rhetoric that is continuing to destroy our community. So those are my final words and final thoughts. And folks can find me on YouTube at LionessCrowned. So I'm LionessCrowned on YouTube, LionessCrowned on Instagram, and LionessCrowned on Twitter.
Yes, sister, I appreciate you and want to invite folks to make sure you come back next Thursday, 8 p.m., same time. I am having on Brother Omawale, also Sister Tamara Sheely, who is also actually a candidate or was a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Georgia. She did not obviously get the Democratic Party endorsement, and she will be one of the guests as well next week, and we will get more into what happened in terms of the politics of what's happening in Georgia, because I think that's on everybody's mind that, you know, it's coming up January 5th. And Brother Omawale is going to talk about his perspective, you know, in terms of how we move forward after this vote in November that we just had over a month ago, how we move forward as well as a community. Stay tuned. We're going to be discussing a number of different topics. You know, on this show, I have a lot in store for you. As I announced earlier this week, Killer Mike will be a guest on Real Talk with ZSJ, your source for uncensored truth telling. He will be here in January. I will announce the date soon. And I will also be bringing in topics such as healing, mental health support, all the things that I feel like are important for our collective community, all the issues that a lot of times don't get enough discussion. And I will be bringing experts in to help talk and walk us through all of those different issues. So stay tuned, family. This is going to be a powerful platform for our community. Thanks for listening tonight. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to share and invite others to subscribe to the page so that they hit the notification bell and they will know when we are live. Thank you, Sister Jade, for being here. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.